The Zephyrian Academy of Advanced Sciences prided itself on accepting only the most intellectually gifted beings from across the galaxy. When the first human had applied 3 cycles ago, the admissions board had debated for weeks. Humans were known as a curiosity, a young species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, hailing from a world so hostile that most civilized races classified it as a death world. Maya Chen had arrived quietly, her small frame and soft-spoken demeanor doing nothing to dispel the faculty's concerns. At barely 1.6 meters tall and weighing only 55 kilograms, she looked impossibly fragile next to her Coranian classmates who stood 3 meters tall, or the crystalline Vithrak whose bodies could withstand the crushing depths of gas-giant atmospheres. She's so small, Professor Zeltar had whispered to his colleague during Maya's first quantum mechanics seminar. The Zephyrian's forearms had gestured dismissively at the human who sat in the front row, furiously scribbling notes. How did something so delicate survive on that nightmare planet they call Earth? Maya had heard the whispers, of course. Her classmates treated her like a piece of rare glass, beautiful to observe but liable to shatter at the slightest touch. They offered to carry her books, insisted on walking her to her dormitory through the climate-controlled corridors, and looked genuinely distressed when she mentioned wanting to join the Academy's wilderness survival course. Absolutely not, Dean Vorthak had declared when she submitted her application. The massive Korvashi's eye stalks had swayed with what Maya had learned was their equivalent of head-shaking. The survival course takes place on Kepler 438c. The gravity is twice what your fragile bones can handle, and the atmospheric pressure would crush your primitive respiratory system. Maya had smiled politely and submitted her medical clearance forms anyway. 3 days into the wilderness course, disaster struck. The transport ship carrying 23 students crash-landed in the middle of Kepler 438c's volcanic highland region. The ship's fusion reactor had breached, filling the air with deadly radiation. Toxic gases vented from the planet's numerous volcanic fissures, creating a hellscape that even the hardy Corvanians found challenging. Maya's classmates huddled in the wreckage, their environmental suits keeping them alive but rapidly depleting their oxygen reserves. The crash had damaged their communications array, and rescue wouldn't arrive for another 48 hours, if they were lucky. "We need to reach the emergency beacon on the mountain ridge," announced Thexval, the largest of the Corvanian students. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world with a toxic atmosphere, making him the natural leader in this situation. But the route goes directly through the lava fields. The ambient temperature is over 800 degrees Celsius. The students looked at each other with growing despair. Even with their environmental suits, such temperatures would overwhelm their cooling systems within minutes. The crystalline Vithrak students were already showing stress fractures from the heat, and the methane-breathing Zathari were struggling with their damaged rebreathers. "I'll go," Maya said quietly. 22 pairs of alien eyes turned to stare at the small human. Several of her classmates made sounds that their translators couldn't quite parse, expressions of disbelief that transcended language barriers. "Maya, no." Velandra, her Zephyrian friend, reached out with one of her delicate tentacles. "You're the most fragile among us. This isn't about intelligence or determination. Your biology simply cannot handle these conditions." Maya was already checking her equipment. Her suit's readings showed external temperatures of 847 degrees Celsius and climbing. The radiation levels would have killed most of her classmates within hours, even with shielding. "You're right," she said, beginning to remove her environmental suit. "My biology is different. What are you doing?" Thexval's voice pitched higher as Maya continued stripping away her protective gear. "The atmosphere will kill you in seconds." Maya paused at the airlock, now wearing nothing but her academy uniform. She looked back at her classmates, beings who had evolved on worlds with gentle breezes and perfect atmospheric composition, who had never known hunger or predation, or the need to run for their lives. "You know what they call Earth in the galactic databases?" she asked. "They call it a death world. They say nothing civilized could evolve there. But they're wrong about one thing. We didn't evolve despite Earth's hostility. We evolved because of it." She sealed the inner airlock door behind her. The outer door hissed open, and Maya stepped onto the surface of Kepler 438c. The air was thick with sulfur compounds and volcanic ash. The temperature would have been lethal to any of her classmates. But Maya's ancestors had walked out of Africa, crossed frozen continents, and built civilizations in deserts that could kill an unprotected human in hours. Her lungs, designed to extract oxygen from Earth's chaotic atmosphere, processed the toxic air with practiced efficiency. Her feet, evolved to run across African savannas and climb rocky mountainsides, found purchase on the volcanic rock. Her skin, toughened by millions of years of survival under a sun that regularly bombarded Earth with deadly radiation, barely registered the heat. Behind her, 22 of the galaxy's most gifted minds watched through the transport's cameras as the fragile human jogged through a landscape that would have killed them in minutes. Maya reached the emergency beacon in 47 minutes, activated the distress signal, and jogged back through the lava fields with a spare oxygen tank for her struggling classmates. When she cycled through the airlock, her uniform was slightly singed but otherwise intact. She wasn't even breathing particularly hard. The rescue ship arrived 6 hours later to find 23 students alive and well, all because the galaxy's most fragile species had casually strolled through conditions that would challenge a battle-hardened Corvashi Marine. As the rescue ship departed Kepler 438c, Dean Vorthak looked at Maya's preliminary survival course evaluation. In the comments section, the course instructor had written a single line in the ancient Corvashi language that roughly translated to, "The small ones are not what they seem." The dean's eye stalks swayed thoughtfully. Perhaps it was time to reconsider the Academy's policies regarding Deathworlders. After all, if Maya Chen was representative of humanity's fragile students, he was intensely curious to meet one of their soldiers.